I certainly agree that all of the attacks, but particularly the nightclub attack and the assassination of the Russian ambassador, are probably false flag attacks. And one of the points that I would emphasize is that the CIA's techniques of mind control are now being used by the Mossad and by the NATO Gladio stay-behinds in Germany and Belgium. So I would not suggest that you rush to blame CIA. I would say that you rush to look for who benefits. In my view, this was done by an outsider that is trying to punish Turkey for working with Russia to make peace in Syria. And then they should also look at the German attack, which was just proven to be a false flag. The truck did not drive into the market. It looks like it was backed into the market, and the entire scene was staged. So there's a need now for Russia, Turkey, and Iran to develop some new counterintelligence doctrine on how to identify a false flag. The second observation I would make to you is that these people who are carrying out the false flag, whether they're being controlled with mind control or whether they're patsies who think that they're going to live through it and they're just actors and then they end up dying, these people are being managed by what are called non-official cover officers. They're not managed by people who work out of their country's embassies. So there is a need for a very special dragnet. And I would personally recommend that Turkey be very, very interested in any Belgians coming into Turkey. And Saudi Arabia, of course, created ISIS with CIA training and CIA arming. So Israel, Saudi Arabia, and NATO. I believe Turkey and Russia are being punished for confronting NATO. I totally agree with Donald Trump. NATO should be dismantled. The United States should close all of its bases overseas, beginning in Europe. All of its bases around Iran should be closed. We have been warmongers for too long, and it's time for Turkey and Russia and others to basically say, we want peace, but we're not going to let you get away with these kinds of attacks.
What do you think? What is the message of the Russian ambassador assassination?
What that tells me is that the people who are behind these things have lost their minds. Because when Russia and Turkey and Iran finally get their counterintelligence act together, I expect these people to be found and executed, and I will be cheering. To assassinate a Russian ambassador is to attempt to start World War III. And that's something that leads me to say that I hope that your president is as restrained as Vladimir Putin was. The American expulsion of 35 Russians is an act of war. It is a provocation. It is not based on evidence. I have listed on my website over 30 people, top NSA people, top CIA people, 2 ambassadors who have all said the Russians did not hack the American election. What we have here in the United States is some traitors, neocons, who are very closely affiliated with both Israel and Saudi Arabia, who are trying to start World War III. We need Turkey's help. Restraint by Turkey and Russia will give Donald Trump the time to deal with these traitors. Well, I'm told that it's an Arab saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Turkey and Russia should be very good friends, and they should not allow any external event to interrupt that friendship. In my view, Byzantine Europe, Russia, Turkey, a little bit of Greece, a little bit of Iran, Byzantine Europe is more important now than Western Europe. And I believe that there is a need for your countries to come together and be a source of stability, intelligence, and integrity. We don't have that in the West right now. We lack stability, we lack intelligence, and we lack integrity. We need some time to get our house in order. So I would say to you, there are many Americas There is a Nazi America. There is a neoconservative, neo-Zionist America. There is also a Donald Trump, Rust Belt, peace-loving America. Give us time. Trust us to get our house in order.
Many sources says many assassinations can occur in Turkey organized by NATO and CIA. Is this possible? What do you think?
It's absolutely possible. As a former CIA spy, I'm less inclined to think that CIA is going to do this. CIA tends to provide the money and the technology, and they then look to Saudi Arabia and Israel and Belgians and Germans and others to do the dirty work. You are under attack. You will have more false flag attacks. You will have more assassinations. You will have more electronic attacks, power outages, things like that, because Erdogan is now seen as a linchpin for stability. Turkey is the center of the earth between Europe, Central Asia, Arabia, and Africa. I think you are going to rise to the occasion, and I pray that you do. But the bottom line here is you're at war now, and it's an asymmetric war, and you cannot assume that anybody is your friend. The U.S. government lies for a living. U.S. ambassadors lie regularly. It's one of the greatest shames of my personal life as a U.S. citizen. I am in the middle of a fight with the leaders of the U.S. intelligence community who are lying to the president-elect about Russia hacking the U.S. election. We lie a lot. Now, you have to understand that the Kurds, as with the Palestinians, are not seen by many people as terrorists. They are seen as freedom fighters. And so from where I sit, it's necessary to have a more balanced view of Kurdistan as opposed to, say, ISIS or Iraqi Sunni renegades or Saudi Sunni mercenaries. Economic sanctions, in my view, are an act of war. And they are completely inappropriate between sovereign nations. I will tell you what I told Ecuador. Spend a year planning for it, and then throw out all of the representatives of every country that is doing sanctions against you. You don't need them. Be an independent Turkey. Donald Trump has enormous potential because he was elected by accident. All of the bookmakers said that he was not going to win. His best odds were 20 to 1. His worst odds were 200 to 1. He won at the very end because the Department of Homeland Security stopped the electronic voting fraud that Hillary Clinton used to steal 13 state primaries from Bernie Sanders. And he won because of the emails, which were leaked by the good guys in the National Security Agency and by an insider in the Democratic National Committee. I'm in the process of calling out the intelligence community leaders for being liars. They are lying to Donald Trump. Now, this leads to the problem. Donald Trump has already been captured by Goldman Sachs. He is already surrounded by people from the establishment who are filtering the information that reaches him. He is already being controlled by the U.S. Secret Service on where he goes and who he meets. Donald Trump is probably the hardest president they have ever had to control since they assassinated John F. Kennedy. He is acutely conscious of the fact that he himself could be assassinated any day. I believe that Donald Trump wants to close our bases in Europe, our bases in the Middle East. I believe that he wants to shut down NATO. I also believe that Lynn Rothschild and Evelyn Rothschild have the power to give Donald Trump $20 billion so that he'll stop talking about that. So right now, it's a roll of the dice. The United States is not a democracy. The United States is a fascist corporate state in which the banks on behalf of the Rothschild family, control the two-party tyranny. So we have no right to be critical of Turkey. So from my perspective, Turkey is absolutely central. All sins should be forgiven as long as Turkey becomes a stabilizing force in the Middle East. And to become a stabilizing force in the Middle East, it needs to deepen its alliance with Russia and Iran, and it needs to put the Saudis and Israelis back into very small boxes. Obama is a puppet. He is a servant to Wall Street. He does what he's told. He's also being lied to. Obama has lost all of his integrity. These sanctions against Russia, in my view, are Obama's doing the bidding of the neoconservative warmongers that General Wesley Clark said have hijacked the U.S. government. Obama is doing this for money. He is not doing this as a matter of principle. And I absolutely salute President Putin for showing restraint. All he has to do is wait for Donald Trump to get into office, and I think these sanctions will be reversed. Now, we do have a problem, because Donald Trump's worst enemy in the U.S. government is not the Democrats. It's the Republicans. The Republicans and the Democrats together favor the banking model that treats war as a business case. We are really desperately in need of an international open source intelligence capability that can demonstrate to the American people with precision the deep corruption that exists across the entire United States system, starting with Goldman Sachs and going all the way down to the Republican National Committee, which, by the way, I think the next batch of leaked emails will bury the Republicans. Now, let's divide this into two parts. Part one is who created, actually three parts. There are three parts to ISIS: who created them, who controls them, and who profits from them. Saudi Arabia and the United States of America created ISIS. There is absolutely no question about that fact. ISIS is largely controlled by Saudi Arabia and Israel. Israel has embedded officers with ISIS. ISIS is also a fragmented mob. So I don't think you can really say it's under control. I think the Russians have done a tremendous job of smashing them, but I am very upset by what we've done to Aleppo. I think Putin could be enormously helpful here. I don't know if anyone in Turkey noticed, but Iran reached out to Trump recently. The president of Iran announced publicly that he bought Boeing aircraft and Airbus aircraft for 50% of the announced price. That's not only my number, that's also Trump's number. We are in agreement that the U.S. government and most people worldwide are paying double. They should not be paying as much as they're paying. I believe that Putin could help show Trump that Turkey is essential to a new world order that displaces NATO, that displaces the neo-Nazis, that displaces Saudi Arabia and Israel. Right now is trapped in the White House. Wall Street created the CIA to have a secret base. All right, as you know, I'm an expert on false flag attacks, and I managed a false flag attack for CIA in the 1980s. John Brennan, the very treasonous director of Central Intelligence, who has recently failed in an attempted coup against Donald Trump. John Brennan has been training and equipping not only ISIS, but individuals from Chechnya and Uyghur to send them back to China and Russia as terrorists. So yes, ISIS is the creature of Saudi Arabia and the United States. I personally think that it's time to shut NATO down. NATO has become nothing more than a means of justifying elective wars and selling U.S. arms. There is no good reason for NATO to exist except to give profit to the banks and the companies that sell U.S. arms. I certainly think that Turkey, Iran, Russia, and China should be working with Europe to suggest that Europe needs its own military operations agency and its own military intelligence agency, and they should basically throw the Americans out of Europe. Now, to Donald Trump's credit, he has said that NATO should be closed. He understands precisely what's going on. He also understands that U.S. military bases are a way of us supporting others with American military soldiers and equipment and funding. I believe all American bases should be closed throughout the world. One of the things people don't realize is that the real reason that we have 1,000 military bases around the world is so that the rogue Central Intelligence Agency can, on behalf of the 1%, smuggle guns, drugs, gold, cash, and small children. These 1,000 bases are essentially a global network for smuggling on behalf of the 1%. All U.S. military bases around the world be closed. Things. Number one, Turkey is not treated as a serious member of NATO, and Turkey should not be a member of NATO, nor should Greece, for that matter. I think Turkey needs to start thinking of itself as the Ottoman Empire again. It needs to start thinking of itself as the centrally located power between Western Europe and Byzantine Europe and the Middle East and North Africa. Turkey is central to the future. Turkey should not be a part of NATO. I recommend that Turkey leave NATO. I recommend that Turkey not buy U.S. arms, and I recommend that Turkey throw the U.S. out of that airbase.
In the light of all these details, maybe we can say that the 15 July coup attempt was related also with the Incirlik base, right? Could we say that?
That it is very dangerous for Turkey to have a U.S. military base in Turkey. The advantages are far, far outweighed by the threat to Turkey of not being able to control everything on that base. You know what a car salesman is? Someone who sells cars? NATO is a car salesman for U.S. military airplanes and tanks. It's not a serious organization. It has a staff of thousands of people who do nothing useful. Wall Street created the CIA to have a secret base within the United States government. There is an excellent book that, if it has not been translated into Turkish, absolutely should be translated immediately. It's called The Devil's Chessboard. It's about the beginning of CIA. CIA, there are actually 7 CIAs. Most of the people in CIA are good people, but there are some rogue elements in CIA which are the ones that smuggle guns and gold and drugs and small children for the elite. These are the elements that do drone assassination and that CIA can kill with impunity. No one holds them accountable. In my view, CIA led a coup against Donald Trump because Donald Trump is the Main Street president. He represents the average small business family farm. And Wall Street is very nervous. Hillary Clinton is the Wall Street candidate. She is the certified criminal who Wall Street can trust to be a good certified criminal. Donald Trump is a wild card. Now, there's a great deal of concern that Trump may have taken a $20 billion bribe from Lynn Rothschild. There's a great deal of concern that Donald Trump is planning to resign and leave Mike Pence as president. So we are still not settled here. But the bottom line is that the Central Intelligence Agency under John Brennan has committed treason. And John Brennan, if he were not on his way out the door, should be on his way to Guantanamo. You need to understand that John F. Kennedy was assassinated by the U.S. government. He was assassinated by the FBI, the CIA, and the Secret Service all working together. And one of the reasons that Trump is bringing his own security to Washington is because he knows that the Secret Service has in the past been a party to the assassination of a U.S. president. Now, I personally trust the Secret Service guys today. I don't think that's going to happen again. I don't think CIA is going to be a party to trying to assassinate Donald Trump. George Soros, acting on behalf of the Rothschilds, if Donald Trump has not accepted the $20 billion bribe, that's another matter entirely. George Soros is known to have funded protests, and I believe George Soros has also funded the assassination of police officers in the United States in order to further create a racial divide that does not exist. Let me make it clear to your listeners. There is no black-white divide in the United States of America. The divide that exists today is between the 99% and the 1%. And Donald Trump represents the 99%. And that is what has our 1% elite terrified. My personal view is that he was not assassinated by the CIA. My personal view is he was assassinated by a NATO Gladio neo-fascist team, a covert team. Your listeners need to know that the chief auditor of NATO was assassinated a few weeks ago. And we all believe that he was about to expose the amount of money that NATO has been spending on assassinations, false flag operations, and the bribing of politicians. I think this Russian ambassador was assassinated by a European team, not by an American team. And I believe that NATO should be collaborating with Russia and others to investigate this, because I'm quite sure that the trail is there. And it would be very helpful to taking Turkey out of NATO if we could prove that it was a rogue element of NATO, an outside deep cover element of NATO, that assassinated the Russian ambassador precisely to disrupt relations between NATO and Turkey. And I give Vladimir Putin great credit. It is absolutely outrageous that 35 Russian officers were expelled from the United States on the basis of lies by John Brennan. And to make it even worse, we closed their beach houses. This is a very underhanded thing to do. You should never interfere with a person's beach house. So I don't think it was the CIA, and I do think NATO is something that should be closed, and I do think that Turkey needs to absolutely withdraw from NATO. All right, as you know, I'm an expert on false flag attacks, and I managed a false flag attack for CIA in the 1980s. False flag attack means not what it appears to be. I have a news flash for you. This guy had nothing to do with the nightclub attack. He's a patsy, okay? The nightclub attack was carried out by at least 3 different people, and they're all gone. It's time you investigated this more seriously. I'm 65 years old. I've spent 40 years as a spy and as an intelligence professional. What I have learned in the last 15 years is that if you don't get counterintelligence right, you can't trust anything else. And from where I sit, I believe that the nightclub attack was a false flag attack or by NATO Gladio. Turkey, it would be very interesting to speculate on what kind of deal Turkey could make with both China and Russia to create a regional currency that is not associated with the US dollar. That's where I would start. I have no problem with countries exercising their sovereign rights. The Americans have bullied everybody else for too long. And one of the things that Donald Trump might need help with is having foreign leaders that are willing to speak directly to the American public. In the United States, our media, and I specifically include CNN, Fox News, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, they're worthless. They're fake news. The Americans don't get the truth from their mass media. If and when Turkey can make its case, I certainly think Trump would be more receptive than Obama was, because Obama has no real sense of ethics. And Trump is much more respectful of the sovereign rights of other countries. So I would say to you, make your case and present it. And if all else fails, send a team in here and kill you.
Allah onların evlerine ateşler salsın.
Your listeners need to understand, first off, that there has never been a European Union. There has been only a European cartel. The European cartel started as a way of protecting their steel industry and then expanded into their other industries. The European Union has never been about protecting the interests of the people of Europe. It's only been about protecting the interests of the banks and the major corporations in Europe. So it is a neo-fascist union to begin with. Second, there are too many vassal states in Europe that are literally under the control of the deep state in the United States, not the legitimate government in the United States, but the deep state. Angela Merkel, for example, is a neo-fascist puppet, and everything she's been doing, including the bland acceptance of all of these millions of refugees, has been intended to destabilize Europe, justify a European army, and lead to a war with Russia. I think your listeners really need to understand that Europe has already collapsed, and it will continue to get worse. The European Union, in my view, is a secret cabal that is biased for corporations and against the people, and it has already failed. But three big things have happened in the last 90 days that have changed the situation in America completely. The first thing is that the lies told by John Brennan about the Russians hacking the election have been completely exposed. And this has had the result of revealing to the public that the secret intelligence community is not the giant that they thought it was. The secret intelligence community has been revealed to be a liar, an empty suit. The second big thing that has happened is that the mass media, which absolutely was certain that Hillary Clinton would be the president, and ignoring the reality in the street, the views of the people, that the mass media is now called in the United States fake news. Now, fake news is a meme that is supposed to be used against skeptics like myself, in the same way that a false flag or conspiracy theorist is supposed to marginalize people who didn't believe the story about the JFK assassination. So the second big thing that has happened is that in addition to the secret intelligence community, the U.S. mass media is now known to be fake news. Everybody understands that they fought against Donald Trump together and failed. So three giants of American fascism have fallen. Now, Trump's problem is that he is surrounded by traitors, and he doesn't have the people around him that he needs in order to rebuild America on the basis of truth, transparency, and trust. Trump right now is trapped in the White House.